Storytime with Stone. Clovis on Parental Responsibilities by H H Munro, aka Saki, apparently. Marion Eggleby sat talking to Clovis on the only subject that she ever fucking was willing to talk about. Her fucking offspring. And their varied perfections and accomplishments. Clovis was not in what could be called a receptive mood. The younger generation of Eggleby, depicted in the glowing improbable colours of parental impressionism, aroused in him no enthusiasm whatsoever. Mrs. Eggleby, on the other hand, was furnished with enthusiasm enough for two. In fact, probably 3, 4, or fucking 5. "You would like Eric," she said, argumentatively rather than hopefully. Clovis had intimated very unmistakably that he was unlikely to care extravagantly for either Amy or Willie. "Yes, I feel sure you would like Eric. Everyone takes to him at once, you know. He always reminds me of that famous picture of the youthful David. I forget who it's by, but it's very well known." "That would be sufficient to set me against him if I saw much of him," said Clovis. Just imagine at auction bridge, for instance, when one was trying to concentrate one's mind on what one's partner's original declaration had been and to remember what suits one's opponents had originally discarded, what it would be like to have someone persistently reminding one of a picture of the youthful fucking David. It would be simply maddening. If Eric did that, I should detest him. "Eric doesn't play bridge," said Mrs. Eggleby with dignity. "Doesn't he?" asked Clovis. "Why not?" "None of my children have been brought up to play card games," said Mrs. Eggleby. "Drafts and Halma and those sorts of games I encourage. Eric is considered quite a wonderful drafts player." "You are stewing dreadful risks in the path of your family," said Clovis. "Fucking friend of mine who is a prison chaplain told me that among the worst criminal cases ever to have come under his notice, men condemned to death or 2 long periods of penal servitude, there was not a single bridge player among them. On the other fucking end, he knew at least 2 expert drafts players among them. I really don't see what my boys have got to do with the criminal classes," said Mrs. Eggleby resentfully. "They have been most carefully brought up, I can assure you of that." "That shows that you were nervous as to how they would turn out," said Clovis. "Now, my fucking mother never bothered about bringing me up. She just saw to it that I got whacked at decent intervals and was taught the difference between right and fucking wrong. There is some difference, you know, but I've forgotten what it is." "Forgotten the difference between right and wrong?" exclaimed Mrs. Eggleby. "Well, you see, I took up natural history and a lot of other subjects at the same time, and one can't remember everything, can one? I used to know the difference between the Sardinian dormouse and the ordinary kind, and whether the wryneck arrives at our shores earlier than the cuckoo or the other way round, and how long the walrus takes in growing to maturity. I dare say you knew all these sorts of things once, but I bet you've forgotten them too." "Those things are not important," said Mrs. Eggleby, "but the fact that we've both forgotten them proves that they are important," said Clovis. "You must have noticed that it's always the important things that one forgets, while the trivial, fucking unnecessary facts of life stick in one's memory like a fucking shit that won't go away. There's my cousin, Edith Clubberly, for instance. I can never forget that her birthday is on the 12th of October. It's a matter of utter indifference to me on what date her fucking birthday falls, or whether she was born at all, really. Either fact seems to me absolutely fucking trivial and unnecessary. I've heaps of other cousins to go on with, but on the other end, when I'm staying with Hildegard Troubley, I can never remember the important circumstance, whether her first fucking husband got his unenviable reputation on the turf or the stock exchange, and that uncertainty rules sport and finance out of the conversation at once, which is fucking awkward. One can never mention travel either, because, well, her second husband had to live prematurely abroad for quite a while. Let's leave it at that." Mrs. Shrubley and I move in very different circles, said Mrs. Eggleby stiffly. No one knows Hildegard could possibly accuse her of moving in a circle, said Clovis. Her view of life seems to be a non-stop run, with inexhaustible supply of petrol. If she can get someone else to pay for the petrol, so much the fucking better. I don't mind confessing to you that she has taught me more than any other woman I can think of. What kind of knowledge? Demanded Mrs. Eggleby, with the air of a jury might collectively wear when fiddling and finding a verdict without leaving the box. You know what I mean. Well, among other things, she introduced me to at least 4 different ways of cooking lobster, said Clovis gratefully. That, of course, wouldn't appeal to you. People who abstain from the fucking pleasures of the card table never really appreciate the finer possibilities of the dining table. I suppose their powers of enlightenment, enjoyment, get atrophied with disuse. An aunt of mine was very ill after eating a lobster, said Mrs. Eggleby. I dare say, said Mr. Clovis. If we knew more of her history, we should find out that she'd been ill before eating the lobster. Aren't you just concealing the fact that she'd had measles and influenza and a nervous fucking headache and hysteria and other things that aunts do have long before she ate the fucking lobster? Come on, confess it now. Aunts that have never known a day's illness are a fucking rarity. In fact, I don't personally know of any. Of course, if she ate it as a child of 2 weeks old, it might have been her first fucking illness and her last. But if that was the case, I think you should have said so first. I must be going, said Mrs. Eggleby in a tone which had been thoroughly sterilised of even perfunctory regret. Clovis rose with an air of graceful reluctance. I have so enjoyed our little talk about Eric, he said. I do quite look forward to meeting him someday. Goodbye, said Mrs. Eggleby frostily. The supplementary remark which she made at the back of her throat was, I'll take care that you never shall.